Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Movie Battleground. I am not Matt Beer. I am not Surbas Sharma. I am, in fact, Caleb Coho. And this is the championship match. Who is going to win the Movie Battleground title? Will Isaac defend? Will Cody take it? We are going to find out today. But I'm not the only one that will be judging this one. I am joined by my greatest enemy and one of my greatest friends, Ryan the Hunter Permison. How you doing?
Doing well, sir. It's nice to be known as a friend around these parts of the woods. But anyway, this is going to be good. This is going to be a lot of fun. You know, Denzel Washington may have directed the film, but tonight we're going to find out who is the great debater.
That is very true. Yeah, I like that a lot. All right, over to my other judge tonight, Nazario Montenegro, Mr. VHS. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited about listening to this match. I actually discovered recently that I really enjoy debating people, and I'm not that bad at it. So this is going to be interesting. Love it.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I think it's time to hear from our players tonight and how they feel about getting into this, and then we'll get on our way. Starting with the challenger, Cody Newberry. How do you feel about getting into the title ring tonight and fighting it out?
It's exciting. I've won debate titles throughout these communities. I think ring rust might play a factor into Isaac. He hasn't been out there for a while. Hopefully he still has got what he showed last time. But I'm no Evan DeGraff and I'm no Greg. I guarantee I'm going to give you a lot harder fight than you had the last time when you won that title from a child and a blowhard. So it's exciting. I respect Isaac. He has a nice strategy. He likes to keep his answers close to his vest. So we'll see if that pays off for him. But yeah, it should be fun. I have a lot of respect for Isaac, but I plan on winning.
All right. And over to the champion, Isaac Horvat. How do you feel about getting back in to defend this title?
I feel good. I feel excited to prove that there's no ring rust on me. I'm ready to go. I've got a lot of respect for Cody as well. I'm excited to finally have a real opponent in this league instead of, like you said, a child and a blowhard. So, I'm looking forward to it. This is not going to go easy on either one of us. And yeah, may the best, greatest debater win.
All right. Well, with that, let's get right into the fight with our first question of round one. Once again, this is a 5-round best-of-9 fight. So there are 5 prep rounds. Before we get to the speed round, in the prep rounds, we are going to give you a 1-minute opening, 5 minutes for the full debate, and then the closing arguments. You've all done this before. If I am wrong, you know to correct me. But you all know how this works. So let's jump right in with our first question, which is, with the Lego Movie 2 coming out in theaters, what is the best sequel to receive best sequel to be an animated movie? Butchered reading that out loud. What is the best animated sequel? We'll just do that way. I'm just going to rephrase it instead of reading it the way it's on paper. What is the best animated sequel? Mr. Horvat, you have chosen to go first. Time begins when you start talking.
I had the great pleasure of not just picking one of the best animated sequels of all time, or the best animated sequel of all time. I had the pleasure of picking one of the best sequels, period, of all time, and that's How to Train Your Dragon 2. This movie takes everything that the first movie, it does exactly what a sequel is supposed to do. It takes everything that the first movie laid the groundwork for and builds upon it. It expands the mythology. It raises the stakes. It enriches the characters. It was more successful. It was received well by critics, and it set up another chapter of this story. Everything is better in this sequel, but it's not just about what it is as a sequel, it's what it is as a movie. And it's an emotional movie, it's a great family movie, but there's also a lot of rich themes that are explored. So not only is it the best animated sequel of all time, it's just purely one of the best sequels, period.
Time.
All right. How to Train Your Dragon 2, Mr. Newberry, what did you pick and why?
Well, it's really interesting. Isaac picked How to Train Your Dragon, but how he explained it was he explained my movie to a T. And I picked Toy Story 2. Toy Story 2 is one of those movies that literally took a buddy cop kind of Toy Story movie that was set in a simple element and raised it to a level that was out of this world. Introduce new characters, which is super hard to do in an animated movie, and make you fall in love with them, with Jesse, with Bullseye, and has one of, I think, the best villain in any of the Pixar movies. Because you don't fully see it coming the entire time, and you see how all that Woody wants is to be with Andy. But this movie shows the difference. Like, he wants to branch out, and he might want something more for himself. And you see that conflict, and then finally having to reunite with Andy. Plus, you have all those original characters coming back. It's an emotional, it's a fun time, and it is by far the best sequel to an animated movie.
All right, perfectly timed. All right, Toy Story 2 versus How to Train Your Dragon 2. 5 minutes for the free-form debate when you start talking.
So How to Train Your Dragon 2 is a good movie. I mean, it does well on, like, kind of adding more to it, but doesn't do a lot. They use a lot of the classic Disney tropes in that one to pull out emotion that didn't need to, like the death of the father. They don't earn the relationship with the mother at all, because that's never really developed in the entire beginning of the story. So you don't see that growth. It is thrust upon you, so you're supposed to have that emotional connection, and him supposed to be like, oh, this is why I love dragons. I get it now. When Toy Story 2 literally has this band of characters that you have so many elements and so many characters that could be convoluted, mesh perfectly together. Why introducing new characters to the fold?
Toy Story 2 does none of that with those characters. It takes the main character and twists him on his head, gives him a completely new motivation that was not set up in any other movie, makes the audience turn against him. I'm talking about Woody here. And the rest of the movie the rest of the characters are treated as these side pieces that are very actually annoying. I really don't like Toy Story 2. There's a whole side plot with Zorg. You said talk about one of the best villains in the movie. Who's the villain? Is it Zorg, Al, the miner? There's no clear villain. Is it Woody's himself? It re-explores the same themes as the first movie. It doesn't really add anything new to the mythology, and it is the worst of the Toy Story movies. If you pick the best animated sequel from the Toy Story franchise, I'd expect you to pick the third one. I'm surprised you didn't. What you said about How to Train Your Dragon 2 is completely false. The whole crux of Hiccup's character was laid out in the first movie of the loss of his mother and not fitting into this Viking world and feeling like he doesn't fit and not understanding it. And the mother is that missing piece. And when it comes into it, it does pay off. The death of the father is paid off with the fact of it forces Hiccup to step up and become the chief that he was always afraid to be, and it ends with him finally taking his rightful place in the place of Stoic. I don't know what you're talking about.
So so you mainly say so this movie wasn't made for Isaac Horvat. That's a fantastic point. Good job. Stinky Pete is literally the main thing of it, and this is the beautiful thing of Toy Story. Just because it wasn't made for you doesn't mean it's not that good. Stinky Pete, Woody doesn't know this life exists for himself, and he sees it out there and sees what I could have had. This is a great life that I could, because he's already been abandoned by Andy. And then he finally realizes at the end that Andy is where he needs to be. That's the emotional crux. Toy Story 2 is a fantastic thing. And why Toy Story 3 is so good is because because of this movie, what it sets up. Literally, Jessie is one of those toys that she knows what it feels like to be Woody abandoned. That song that breaks everybody's heart in the film has such a great emotional connection. Those characters have so much heart throughout the entire thing about being abandoned, being pushed off. And Zurg and Braz make perfect sense, because that is literally who Buzz thinks he is most of the time. He has to battle, and he has to go get his friend that betrayed him at the beginning. That's why it's a beautiful film. Your movie has great colors, great visuals, but again, they don't earn those deaths. They don't earn that point, because that is just manipulation of the audience, because you're like, oh, this character wasn't around anymore, and they didn't have that much father-son moments. It's mostly him and the dragon, and then all of a sudden he dies, and you're supposed to feel this thing, but you don't feel much because it's just thrust upon you.
That's not true. The whole point of the first movie and the first half of the second movie is him trying to live up to his father's expectation and his place in the tribe. And through his father's death, he's finally able to fulfill that. He's finally able to live up in his minds to his father's expectations. Your movie takes the characters, and Woody's whole thing in the first movie is that we are toys and we need to accept this. He gives a famous thing. Toy Story 2 has 2 good scenes in it, the Jessie scene and the restoration scene, and it completely forces a whole new character motivation onto a familiar character, makes him feel completely foreign. I don't understand who Woody is in this movie. It's not the Woody from the first one, and it's not built upon, it's not set up. It's completely out of left field.
Yeah, of course it's not a fault. It's a new concept because Woody didn't see it coming. Woody sees it and has to take this emotional level to decide between Andy or this new life for him, which makes perfect sense because he realizes what Buzz had in the original. Buzz thought he was a toy, and he saw that he had a TV show and stuff. He didn't know this life existed for himself, and then he does, and then that's the emotional element that Andy is who he needs at the end of the time, so he goes back to him and sins. Your thing is living up to his expectations, so his father's death, but you don't even talk about the mother part that's forced upon and not well voice acted at all, so you're not driven by that character.
Don't you dare come after Cate Blanchett, sir.
I will. I'm sorry.
The voice cast is brilliant.
Piece of wood.
All right, time. All right. Good debate so far. All right, so with the closing, Cody, you will be going first for your closing argument. Have the allotted time begins when you start talking.
Toy Story 2 does a beautiful thing that it throws it all around because it shows what Buzz was struggling with the first one, now Woody is struggling with, and it introduces new characters. And this has a huge cast of characters that you care about at all walks of their life, and you care about what they're doing and their importance to Andy and Woody's lack of judgment, seeing like maybe I could have a better life and I don't need Andy, and how important Andy is. How to Train Your Dragon 2 is an emotional movie that just suckers you into the things because they pull off the things that are famously by Disney, by the parents' death and the different things that didn't matter. Again, the voice acting from Cate Blanchett is not that great of a thing to draw you into this character that you believe that this is a mother and son relationship now that the father's dead. Again, the main story of that thing is it was perfectly in the first one. It honestly didn't need a sequel, and they just tied into a sequel, and it was good, but it doesn't live up to the magic of that first movie. I'll stop there.
All right. Isaac, you have your closing when you start talking.
Cody said it himself. He talked about how Woody is discovering this lesson about being a toy, which is literally the same thing that he taught someone else in the first movie. It's a complete retread of that lesson. It's not that original. It's not that good. That's what I don't understand about Woody's character in Toy Story 2, is that he's literally learning a lesson that he taught somebody else in the first movie, and it doesn't make sense to me. How to Train Your Dragon 2, first off, Cate Blanchett's voice acting in this is brilliant. I was going to bring up Jay Baruchel, Gerard Butler, and Cate Blanchett's voice work in this. That song that Gerard Butler and Cate Blanchett sing back and forth is rich in emotion and detail, and I'm sorry, you can criticize maybe some things about this movie, you can't criticize the voice act. Jamon Hudson does an incredible job as a villain. You want to talk about villains versus Toy Story 3 versus mine? My villain is way scarier and way better. My movie does what sequels are supposed to do. It raises the stakes, it expands the mythology, it grows the characters in age and in maturity, and it's a better movie all around.
All right, time. All right. Good fights all the way around. Nazario, I'm going to start with you. Where are you leaning and why?
First, great job, guys. It was very balanced on both sides. I actually like how they were defending Toy Story, Cody, because I think you had a really good point about it has a good villain with Stinky Pete, which is a very solid villain. And I didn't see Isaac brought up the villain from How to Train Your Dragon until the very end in the closing arguments, which is probably a smart choice because I think that is one of the weakest parts of the movie. I don't know why you were questioning the voice acting, because in fact that is one of the things that you shouldn't question about that movie, but I did find you had a good point with the development of characters. When Isaac tried to come back saying that the toys were not really developed, then you brought up the restoration scene and Jessie and her whole story when she was abandoned, which is a solid point. And actually, I do understand why Woody would act this way, even based on the things from the first movie. So I actually think for the first point, I think Cody had a more solid case for Toy Story 2.
All right. So you're giving your point to Cody?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Ryan, where are you leaning and why?
Yes, sir. This was a very, very good debate. Very good question. I felt that Cody brought up a lot of the elements that made this sequel, the one that he chose with Toy Story 2, so good, so successful. While Isaac, while he did throw some good points in there, he kind of saved a lot of it towards the part of it towards the end. I wish he would have included just a little bit more substance of why How to Train Your Dragon 2 is this better sequel in this case than Toy Story 2. So he kind of left it towards the end there. That kind of, could have done more during the debate part of it. But other than that, pretty good debate. But on this case, I'm going to lean towards more so with Cody and give him the point.
All right. So it does not matter what I think. Cody is getting the point. Cody is up 1-0 after the first round. And that puts us into our second question coming up for this one is, what was the best romantic comedy of the 90s? Cody, you will be going first on this one. You have your minute opening when you start talking.
Yeah, so when it came to romantic comedy, I think the best thing about a romantic comedy is that it has to have an even balance between the romantic elements and the comedy elements. So I went with the 1990 release of Pretty Woman. Richard Gere and Julia Roberts. I feel like this movie has such a unique spin on this businessman and a prostitute shouldn't work. Julia Roberts is at her funniest in this movie by far. Richard Gere has those comedic elements because she has to develop into his world. She has to develop into, she has to develop into his. He has to develop into hers and get to realize that she's not what they are. So I think Pretty Woman is the clear choice of the best romantic comedy of the 90s.
All right. Ending a little bit early there. Isaac, you have your opening as soon as you start talking.
I agree. The best romantic comedy should be discussed as romantic and comedy. I chose You Got Mail. Tom Hanks, Meg Ryan plays off each other perfectly in terms of romantic and their chemistry. It is funny. You got a great supporting cast of, especially her group in the store. It's quotable. It's whimsical. But the part of the question that I think matters is the rom-com of the 90s. And this movie is the perfect example of that. It fits into that time period perfectly. There's never a question of where this movie is, what time it's set in. And as it's not just one of the best rom-coms of the 90s, it is one of the best of all time, mainly because of their two leads, Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks. They had the chemistry in Sleepless in Seattle. This movie takes that chemistry, improves upon it, their interplay. Like I said, it's romantic, it's funny, it's quotable, and the soundtrack is amazing. You've Got Mail.
All right. You guys have the floor for your open 5 minutes whenever you start talking.
You got a dead argument. You don't got mail. You got a dead argument. You literally picked one of the worst romantic comedies. You didn't even pick Sleepless in Seattle, which would have been the better choice to battle. This is just rehashing the chemistry they had and put it in there. This movie shows how bad. So the best thing is the best came out in the 90s. It doesn't have to represent the 90s. That's not the question. Because if it was, congratulations, you take the cake. Because this shows how bad the internet was in a bookstore. Like, this is the biggest piece of wood that Tom Hanks has put out besides The Terminal. I couldn't even believe that you quoted the soundtrack because you have to listen to the music versus the actual movie. Like, it is not well acted.
That's something that supports the movie. I'm not arguing for the soundtrack. I'm arguing for the movie. You chose the movie that's one of the most problematic rom-coms of all time. How do you choose Pretty Woman where I honestly... The horror, wow, I can't even say
the horror.
Horror, the hooker, the call girl gets bought and paid for, and that's supposed to be romantic. Like, it's really super problematic in any time period. I can't believe you would choose something with that big of an Achilles heel.
It's
the
not
more you
that big
think
of
about
an
it, the less romantic it is, and it's not funny. It's sad and it shouldn't be a rom-com. It should be a tragedy. It should be a drama.
That's a totally different, and you want to just hang on that linchpin, that's fine. But there's actually romantic elements that follow on where that's not what he even does. Like, that's not the point of it anymore. He actually falls for this girl. That is one of the
The romantic thing is that he falls in love with his call girl. That's the romantic thing.
That's fine. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what she chose as a profession. You can argue semantics that's saying that this is not good for women. This is a feminist movement, blah, blah, blah. But the problem is the movie still works and it's romantic elements throughout it. This is what your movie, it sparked these two people's career in such a trajectory from this movie, and it still holds up today. Yes, it's not appropriate to be a prostitute or a call girl, but that's the romantic comedy elements of this movie. You picked one that's not even funny. There's no comedic elements in the thing besides that how slow the internet is.
No, yes, there is. Have you seen this movie? Tom Hanks' one-liners in this movie are great. His whole Starbucks rundown of how people that have a hard time making decisions, how they order at Starbucks, is incredible. What's great about rom-coms is that they take you into this fantasy world where everybody sings song, where there's music playing and people fall in love.
That's actually not the case.
Yes, it is. Your movie is not that at all. My movie is whimsical and fantastical, and when you watch it, you want to be in this world. I don't want to be in a world where rich businessmen fall in love with their prostitutes, and that's supposed to be romantic. Your movie barely worked when it came out, and it certainly doesn't work now.
It works now, and it still works because that's the comedic elements of it. It literally does not. It's literally he is falling in love with this girl that he honestly shouldn't have because he just called her for a good time, technically. And then they end up falling in love with each other, and it goes back and forth, and he's trying to bring her into his world, and it's not working. And
it's called the Stockholm Syndrome. It's not funny or romantic.
That's your viewpoint on the whole matter. The whole matter of the movie is actually very romantic and very comical. It's just the profession she was thrown in. Your movie is about as dry as the books that they sell in that store of You Got Mail.
Why do you have a problem with books?
That's the problem. You picked the wrong Tom Hanks Meg Ryan movie. You did not pick Sleepless in Seattle. You picked You Got Mail, which is a
better movie. I have much. Yes.
You are mind blown if you believe that is the case, because that is complete false. No one pops in You Got Mail because they want a romantic comedy.
Yes,
they
do.
To see how good the internet has improved.
That isn't that true at all.
There's literally a whole focus on the dialogue of AOL in that movie.
It's supposed to be a time capsule. It's not about how bad the internet was. People don't put it in to study how the internet worked. They put it in because they want to watch the chemistry of Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks, which is better than Sleepless in Seattle. No, it's better than Sleepless in Seattle. Put that aside. It's funnier than Sleepless in Seattle. It's got a better cast of supporting characters, and it treats every character with their own.
Richard Gere and Julia Roberts are at their best in these movies, and they actually show that this is completely a taboo subject, and they do a perfect job of representing it in the movie and have this romantic elements and this comedy elements back and forth, because she's a fish out of water in this situation, and they end up falling for each other. That's the romantic element. I understand that you're completely against Richard Gere buying prostitutes and blah, 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 but guess what? That was how the movie came out in the 90s, and it is the best comedy of the 90s. I'm not going to – there's no argument on just being a feminist movement of your movie, basically. You picked the wrong Meg Ryan, Tom Hanks movie. I'm sorry that you –
Time. All right, time. All right, Isaac, your closing begins when you start talking.
Like I said in my opening, the point of a rom-com is to be romantic, it's to be comedic, it's to give you this fantasy world where two people fall in love. It's not supposed to be realistic. It's not supposed to be something that you want to think about very deeply. It's supposed to carry you to this other place and entertain you, and that's what You've Got Mail does perfectly. It's the perfect, fantasy world where the internet is a safe place and people can meet and date there, and bookstores are a thing and you can go to them and go to another place, and people that are as charming and attractive as Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks can have these quippy dialogues and fall in love, and that's what this movie gives you. It's sugar cake. It's so entertaining to just sit down and watch this. You sit down and watch Pretty Woman and you're going to be thinking about the problems that this movie presents.
Time. All right, Cody, 45 seconds for your closing when you start talking.
Pretty Woman is a movie of the 90s that shows up this romantic element that should not work. He literally hires her not to have sex with her. He literally invites her to social events because he needs a woman on his arm, and that's what he chooses as the escort. Then they end up falling in love, which shouldn't have worked. Yours is a movie about a rival business people of bookstores that doesn't have, you say a great supporting cast. I'm sorry, Greg Kinnear is not that fantastic in this movie and rivals everything. And Tom Hanks gives one of the most walkthrough performances at the entire thing that Meg Ryan is the standout in this movie. Sleepless in Seattle is a way better Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan movie. My movie has actually good moments, good comedic moments, especially with Julia Roberts having to live in this world that she's not supposed to be in, and Richard Gere falling for her. That's allowed to happen at any point.
All right. I'm going to go first on this one. This was a great fight. I'm going to go first on this one because my vote didn't count last time. I'm going to go. This was really tough. It was neck and neck throughout the entire thing for me. I think Isaac kind of lost a little steam in the towards the end of the freeform debate, and I was really listening to his closing to try and find something to kind of get him back in there for me. And he almost did it, but Cody's closing I think just swayed me the way I needed it to at the very end. So I'm going to give my point slightly to Cody. Ryan, where are you leaning and why?
Yes, sir. With this, man, it was hard for me to keep my poker face because there was some good banter and one-liners thrown there by both competitors. But anyway, the question at hand, I feel like it was really neck and neck for a good part of it, yes. But towards the end, I would say Cody pulled something out. He kept saying that this is a situation that should not work. It can't work, but then again, it does. That to me was saying this is a movie that's different. It took an idea and put its best foot forward, and it did something. Whereas with Isaac's, yes, it's the re-teaming of Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks. Great chemistry, no question about it. But I don't feel like he just quite got there. So just by the few skinniest of margins, I'm going to give it over to Cody.
All right, so with that, Cody takes his second point and is up 2-0 through 2 rounds. Nazario, your point didn't count, but where would you have leaned?
Actually, it was very balanced. The only thing I was thinking about was that Isaac basically picked one thing from Pretty Woman and kept hammering it, and it wasn't until the very, very last moment of his closing argument that really Cody sold me on that the fact that she was a hooker was not the main issue. She just needed a company, and that's what he was fixing it. But it was a little too late. Isaac also defended well the fact that they had better supporting characters, and I didn't see Cody bringing up the supporting characters from Pretty Woman. Other than that, it was all pretty balanced, but I would have gone with Isaac in this one.
All right. All right. Well, moving on to the third question of this match. It is, who gave the best performance in a bad movie? Isaac, you'll be going first on this one. Time begins when you start talking.
The best performance in a bad movie for me, this is one of the most criminally underrated performances of all time. It's Bill Nighy as Davy Jones in Dead Man's Chest. He gives a performance for the ages. It's literally Heath Ledger as the Joker level or Andy Serkis's Gollum level. He owns this character. He gives it his own spin, his own way of speaking. He commands every single scene that he's in. He's funny. He's terrifying. The CGI is not hindered by his performance. He owns this character in a way that few other actors have owned characters before. I think he should have been nominated for this role. I think this is a defining role in his career. It's a defining role in any career, in movies in general. He gives one of the best villains in movie history on the level of Darth Vader. It's Davy Jones all the way. This performance is incredible.
All right, Cody, time begins for your opening when you start talking.
I'm about to flip the fuck out because you literally picked a Pirates movie that is good. I love this movie. This is by far my favorite Pirates movie, but I'll tell you that in the debate. Mine is by far the worst performance in best performance in a bad movie, and that would be Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi in Attack of the Clones. This movie, he should not even have a coherent part. He literally has one of the worst scripts ever delivered, and he does such a wonderful job that he is literally the standout of these prequel movies in the bottom of the barrel of Star Trek movies and Star Wars movies and things. He does so much with it that he has literally transcended the thing, and they want movies with just him in it at this point. His performance is against sand and all those terrible one-liners that all those actors have, and he actually shows heart and he actually embodies the real Obi-Wan Kenobi. Time.
All right. Davy Jones versus Obi-Wan Kenobi. time begins for the free form when you guys start talking. Floor is yours.
If you had chosen Obi-Wan and maybe the third, the Revenge of the Sith, I could understand it. But in Attack of the Clones, he's not given much to do. He's regulated as these side missions, and he doesn't give that much to do and that much to perform. There's nothing that defining about his performance. It's just him parroting what Oz Guinness's accent was, or not Oz Guinness, but what's his name that played the original Obi-Wan. It's him doing his accent and doing his Jedi thing. There's not that much complexity to his performance. There's not that much interesting things going on with his performance. There's nothing that great about his performance at all. Not compared to Bill Nye as Davy Jones.
You're right. You're right. Bill Nye does give the best performance of our twos. The problem is you picked a good movie. It literally follows The Black Pearl, which is actually a quality Pirates movie. At World's End is when it falls off the deep end because it gives you a 3-hour power struggle. This one has Bill Nighy versus Jack Sparrow versus Barbossa. This is a fantastic battle of wits that is actually really good. You get to see new depths in this movie that you didn't get to see in that first one. You get to see Will Turner's dad in this one, and you get to see why he lost his life. You get Davy Jones is actually the reason this movie is elevated.
I agree.
You're right, because it's not a bad movie.
Good, but it's still a bad movie. It's still too bloated. It's still too
bad of this movie because they
started going off the rails.
Tell me why this is a bad movie, because the basic thing is they take what's great in the first one and elevate it with a bigger stake with Davy Jones and the Flying Dutchman, that this man is hunting, and the Kraken. That is one of the coolest scenes in the entire thing as the Kraken devours ship after ship. I'm sorry, I apologize to you, Isaac. You picked the wrong Pirates movie. You could have even picked Davy Jones in World's End, because that would have been correct. But Davy Jones in Dead Man's or whatever the end of the title is, it's Dead Man's Chest. It's actually fantastic because you actually get to see the heart of Davy Jones and why he's doing this stuff, and it's actually intrigue. It's not too long like all the other pirate movies.
It is too long. 2.5 hours long.
That's fine. Almost same runtime as
Black Pearl. On the screen, I agree. This movie is way better whenever he's on the screen. But I'm sorry, you can like this movie if you want. That doesn't change. You can like bad movies. That's fine. The general consensus is that this is a bad movie. It's too bloated. There's too many storylines going on. This isn't about whether my movie's bad or not. It just is generally accepted as it is. You can like it if you not or not. But generally, it was not well received. His performance, however, is the best part of this movie, and it's far better than Obi-Wan.
No, Obi-Wan, you can say that he doesn't allocate. He literally, you can't even say that because the character that played Obi-Wan literally just did it for a paycheck and walked through it. Obi-Wan actually takes heart and stuff, and he actually sees the turn in Anakin coming, and he wants to try to bring him back. He is the best acting performance in that dog shit of a movie. It literally ranks at the very bottom of everybody's list because the writing in it is so bad. But the one person that doesn't hinder from the writing is Obi-Wan Kenobi. He literally, Ewan McGregor, carries that actor to such a height that when it comes to the third one, it is such a good performance. I didn't pick the third one because the third one is considered good and bad. Kind of what you picked. You picked the second one after Black Pearl, and people liked Dead Man's Chest. They like the character battle between each other.
No. They like Davy Jones in Dead Man's Chest.
And he's got the most.
That's literally all they remember. There's a whole section with some British commander that nobody remembers because it's a completely extra storyline that bloats the movie. That's what I'm saying. Everybody remembers the good part about Dead Man's Chest, I agree, and it's Bill Nye as Davy Jones. Nobody remembers.
Everybody remembers Norrington. I don't know if that's who you're conferring to, but they do know Norrington the entire time.
The first one.
But listen, the Kraken is literally one of the coolest parts of this entire movie. That's the linchpin of the thing. It's to have our ship. You see Jack Sparrow have to go to a new depth. You get to see more of the twisted side of the Pirates of the Caribbean. Davy Jones is one of those iconic characters that literally lifts the entire movie to be a quality movie. He's got the most screen time in the entire movie. Like, you can't say this is a bad movie because you just didn't like it. It may not live up to your expectations of the Black Pearl, but it's not the dog shit of Attack of the Clones is. Attack of the Clones is one of the worst scripts ever, and Ewan McGregor.
I'm not disagreeing that your movie's a bad movie. I'm just saying that just because my movie's a better movie than your movie doesn't mean that my movie's not a bad movie.
Yours doesn't answer the question. You literally picked a good movie with a great performance. Congratulations. My movie is literally...
In your opinion, it's a bad movie. In everyone else's, it's not. It doesn't have a fresh score on Rotten Tomatoes. It's generally...
That's literally divided. That's not bad. That's divided. That's.
It's generally accepted that this is where the Pirates went downhill.
Time.
All right, Cody. Time begins when you start talking for your closing.
Dead Man's Chest literally has an audience score of 72, which means the general audience that walked out of it really did enjoy it. That's literally over half. The problem with your movie is it's actually a good movie, and Davy Jones is a great character that matches with Jack Sparrow that just got an Oscar the year before. It doesn't mean that the Pirates went downhill at this point. They were on the rise still. World's End drove it down. Attack of the Clones, Phantom Menace was a pile of shit, and they just added even more pile of shit. And Ewan McGregor could have said, F this movie, I'm just going to walk through it, but literally gives one of those great performances, especially in that battle with all the Jedis and all the drones coming in. That's a fantastic arc where you see Ewan McGregor have to rise up and battle, and you get to see new sides of Obi-Wan that you never got to see in the original trilogy. Your movie is actually good, and Davy Jones gets a hell of a performance in a great movie.
All right, Isaac, time begins when you start talking for your closing.
Ewan McGregor gives a good performance in a bad movie. I'm not disagreeing with you at all. It's the best performance of that movie. That movie isn't the worst in that prequel franchise, but we'll disagree on that. Phantom Menace is far worse. But in terms of my movie, you can have the opinion that it's a good movie. I'm not saying you can't not like this movie or whatever, but in general, it's accepted. This is where the Pirates went down. It got too bloated. It got too big for its own britches. But the one redeeming thing that almost makes this movie great or good is Bill Nighy as Davy Jones. He gives the best performance in a bad movie. This movie isn't a joy to watch. It's anytime he's not on screen, it's hard to watch. When he is on screen, it's the best to watch because of him.
All right, Nazario, your vote didn't count last time. We'll go to you first. Where are you leaning and why?
This was not the debate that I was expecting. I honestly thought they were going to argue about the quality of acting, and it mainly became an argument about which movie is actually the worst movie or a bad movie. And I think with that point of view, because we didn't really went that deep into acting, they both accepted that the characters were good acted and they were both the most memorable part of those films. Arguing which movie was better, I think Cody has the edge here because, Dead Man's Chest has a split Rotten Tomatoes score of 53, but the third movie is actually lower, it's 44. And Isaac actually changed because at the beginning he was talking about he picked the wrong movie because he should have gone with part 3, but in the closing argument he changed it to Phantom Menace. So
I said that one was worse.
Yeah, but you first said he should have picked part 3, which I actually think is widely accepted as a better movie than 2. Also, you said that Obi-Wan didn't have much to do in the Attack of the Clones, which is actually not right. That's the one where he has the most to do out of the trilogy because he has the whole B-plot with the clones and Jango Fett. So I wish you had both stuck more to the acting, but given what you gave us, I think Cody wins this one.
All right, Ryan, where are you leaning and why?
Boy, did this debate take a turn. Wow. Yeah. During the 5-minute portion, I felt like I heard a lot of Bill Nye does this, and that, and this Pirates movie is this, and that, and Star Wars is this, and that. I didn't really get too much of like both competitors focusing on making their actual point of their answer to this question. But man, this is a tough one. I got to be honest with you because Isaac, you had me going there with Bill Nye. Oh my God. You had me going there with Bill Nye. You really did. But I can't believe I'm going to say this. But I believe, especially when we got towards the conclusion of this, just, man, hate to say it, but Cody, sorry, I can't even pronounce my own words. Cody actually sold me on Ewan McGregor kicking tail and taking names with a good performance in an otherwise garbage movie with Attack of the Clones. So man, I really wanted to give Isaac the point, but just by a smidge, a little itty-bitty little smidge on the little itty-bitty little road, I'm going to give it to the Cody man.
My vote didn't matter. I think Cody did something really interesting by changing the entire debate. And because he changed the entire debate, he kind of drew Isaac into fighting his fight. And by doing that, Isaac kind of stumbled and wasn't able to really hit Ewan McGregor outside of calling him an Alec Guinness knockoff. and Cody kind of changed the whole debate. So I would have leaned with Cody on that too because of the tactics and the argument given. But yeah, all right. So moving on to round 4, our fourth question: with What Men Want being released yesterday, which is a remake of the Mel Gibson movie What Women Want, what movie, which was released at least 20 years ago, should get a remake? Since this is a pitch round, we are going to allow you to have 2 minutes for your opening and 1 minute for your close. So that way you get all your ducks in a row. All right, so Cody, you will be going first on the pitch round. Time begins when you start talking.
So this is a really broad topic, and you can go a bunch of different ways. But I went a movie that was actually not terrible, but with new direction and a better script, I think this movie could be brilliant. And I went with Double Jeopardy. Double Jeopardy is Tommy Lee Jones and Ashley Judd, basically where the plot is the husband fakes his murder, blames it on his wife, she goes to jail, and she comes back and hunts him down because she can't be tried for double jeopardy of killing the same person. I believe this movie had a lot of great potential. I just don't believe it was written that strongly, and I don't believe that it was presented in the right direction. So what I have predicted is that the script be written by Tyler Sheridan, which is Hell or High Water, Sicario, amazing writing, has that intrigue, that hard pounding stuff, because that's what you kind of want in this kind of movie. I have Danny Boyle directing this movie. I think he will add a great element to it of these cast of characters, and I have the 2 stars of the movie being Rosamund Pike taking on what Ashley Judd was doing, and I actually have, since Hacksaw Ridge came out and he showed that he actually has strong acting performance, I want to give him a shot because how Tommy Lee Jones had that comedic moments too. I want that same thing. I'm going to actually pick Vince Vaughn to be the detective holding Rosamund Pike. I think this movie has something that you just can't. It's got this such unique plot that it was so good, but if the writing was good, it would have been magic. And I think Rosamund Pike is one of the greatest actresses working today. She delivers everything like Gone Girl, stuff like that. And a woman on revenge going for the husband that fakes her own death to hunt him down would be beautiful. And there's no better writer and director, Danny Boyle and Tyler Sheridan, as a team up on this movie would be brilliant.
All right, and time. Isaac, your time to pitch begins when you start talking.
All right, I picked the 1995 animated movie, The Pebble and the Penguin. This is one of my personal favorites growing up. But the question is, what movie deserves a remake? And I would argue that no movie deserves a remake more than The Pebble and the Penguin. This movie has a great movie idea, and it has some great songs. But it was poorly marketed, terribly animated. It had terrible production troubles behind the scenes wherein the studio interfered. And by the end of it, Don Bluth and Gary Goldman were so unhappy with how it turned out and the studio interference. They demanded that they be uncredited as directors, and they ended up accepting a deal from a rival studio to set up their animation. It was actually Fox's Animation, their department. They were so unhappy with how the studio interfered. So this movie is not a good movie. It honestly isn't, but it's a great idea, and it has a special place in my heart. And I think that if we're talking about deserves, this movie needs an audience. This movie, I wish people would give this movie a chance, but I think the way to do it would be to make a complete remake, use the same songs, get a new voice cast, give it the animation and time it deserves so that it could be discovered by a whole new generation of kids and be appreciated for what it was supposed to be, which was a Don Bluth classic. It ended up being so interfered that he ended up not even wanting his name attached to it. This movie, when you're talking about deserves a remake, this movie deserves to be remade and remade well. Pebble and the Penguin, all the way.
All right. With that, the 5-minute freeform is open. Have at it, guys.
Rosamund Pike in a revenge movie. How original. That's such a great idea. Double Jeopardy, you're right, is a good movie. Like, that's what I don't understand. We're talking about a movie that deserves remake. When I think it deserves remake, I want something that offers something new, something fresh, changes how that movie looks or something. Like, offers something new. And all I heard was remake it better. rewrite it better with new people. Also, if you have the writer already attached that you would want, why would you want a different director? I'd give him the directing duties too. That's just me. I don't see how Double Jeopardy deserves a remake.
Yeah, that's fine with you. Again, I just believe that he is one of the strongest writers, and I think Danny Boyle is a strong director, so that would be a perfect team up on that movie. The problem is the movie is okay. It doesn't capitalize on what it could be. You picked The Pebble and the Penguin, which head outs to you because I like that movie growing up too. I think it actually does need to do something better. But I don't think a big studio will pick that up on the problem. I think it would come out like a Norm of the North, a Plains, something like that. It doesn't have that strong source material that somebody would gravitate to and be like, yes, I'll give a shot on that. Happy Feet came out. Kind of not not the same storyline, but it was already a Penguin animated movie. I don't believe that they'll go to that direction because it just, I think what realized is it wasn't a strong story. I don't believe that story has that good arc. It works for the smaller generations, but what most people are doing now with animated movies are elevating them to a level that you like. It's no longer kid. It's like you got to meet all these genres. And I don't think The Pebble and the Penguin does that.
The question isn't what movie would the studios realistically approach as a project to do. It's what deserves a remake, and The Pebble and the Penguin deserves it more than Double Jeopardy. I like Happy Feet and Happy Feet 2 came out and were successful, so I don't understand. Studios love capitalizing on things that are familiar. Another animated Penguin movie, that sounds like right up somebody's alley.
I get that this might be not a studio takes a shot on, but I'm saying the two big ones, Illumination and Disney, are not taking a shot on Pebble and the Penguin. Like
that's not the question. I don't care if they take a shot.
I get the thing. So you're going to get a mediocre movie like Norm of the North or like those Smallfoot, like those movies that don't have that much brilliance. You're not pitching who did it or what is going on. You just said, I like this thing and I want the same songs and I want the voice.
I'm saying it deserves a remake. I would like a big studio like Disney to take it.
You want the same songs of a non-successful movie. I don't get why that would be promising or a good idea.
Because the songs are still great. The songs are not the problem with the movie. The problem is the animation and the story.
Are the songs really that great?
Yes, they are.
Who do you hear ever listening to The Pebble and the Penguin sound?
That's the problem.
I don't see
not many people because it wasn't what received when it came out.
Even our generation doesn't pop that in and listen to the soundtrack of The Pebble and the Penguin. My movie takes
because it wasn't discovered. It means discovered. That's why the whole point of this argument.
Two people on the internet watch Pebble and the Penguin, and I don't pop it in. My problem is Rosamund Pike and Vince Vaughn could give a great performance in this movie with a better script that makes it actually a revenge thriller that people love to go see. He's done so many great ones like Wind River, Sicario, Hell or High Water. Those are three of the greatest movies that came out in the past few years, and they could do so much more with this great concept of Double Jeopardy. Your movie says you need a remake, but you just want the same soundtrack and a different voice cast. I don't want that.
And a different story. I said a different story.
It didn't work the first time.
Because the studio interfered. That's the whole point. Don Bluth said.
Interfered? You're not behind it.
Gee, oh my! Read a book about animation history. That's a
I'm not
phase.
About the Pebble and the
They literally left the studio because of all the studio interference.
1 minute.
Okay,
that's
who's
the
directing your
point
movie?
of why Don Bluth left that.
Directing your movie?
Somebody at Pixar. I don't care. I want a big remake. I'm not saying that I have, Don Bluth 2 lined up and go. I'm saying what movie deserves a remake. I'm not saying what movie realistically, what studio would actually pick this up. I don't know. I'm saying this movie deserves a remake. I'm answering the question here.
Okay,
You're just
that's fine.
My
movie deserves a remake too, but I want a new cast, a new director, and a new writing script.
Why? You're not saying why. You're just saying new stuff. Why does it deserve a remake? The movie was fine as it is. It's just another revenge thriller.
The script was not great. It has a great concept of you can't be tried for Double Jeopardy, and Rosamund Pike hunting down her former ex-husband with Vince Vaughn tailing her. Written by Tyler Sheridan, and Danny Boyle sounds like a perfect movie. I want this movie because I liked it and I grew up with it, and I think it should do it. That's not
because it was almost a good movie and it deserves its shot.
It was not.
All right, time. All right. All right. So, Isaac, you get to go first for your rebuttal or for your closing. Time begins when you start talking.
Question is, what movie at least 20 years old deserves a remake? My movie was almost a good movie. They had the story right. They had it ready to go, and the studio interfered. And I don't understand how you question my knowledge of behind the scenes. It's a pretty infamous Hollywood story of MGM. It was the last animated movie they made because their whole animation department pretty much walked out afterward. This is a classic case of somebody messing with a good thing, and it deserves to see the light of day. The songs are good. That wasn't the problem. These songs deserve to be discovered by a new generation. I watched this with my nieces and nephews, and they liked the songs, and they were bored by what they were seeing. That's the magic of this movie. This movie deserves better animation. It deserves a story rewrite. That's what this movie deserves. Your movie is just an SVU episode or something. It's a television special or just another a revenge thriller that we get every single year that aren't that great. My movie deserves a remake. Your movie deserves a rental.
Time. All right, Cody, you have your closing when you start talking.
The man picked an animated sequel that you could pick any animated sequel. My problem is that you're just saying that it deserves a remake, but guess what? When it goes into the wrong hands again or a wrong studio, you're saying a director at Pixar or it just needs a rewrite. I'm sorry, that does not make that a great movie. That does not make it what you need to see. And again, you're saying soundtracks. I didn't hear you mention one song that makes that movie stand out. The problem with Double Jeopardy is a fantastic movie. Premise of a movie that you can literally send this revenge thriller, and you're saying revenge thrillers are rentals. No, Sicario is a fantastic. Gone Girl. These are movies that came out that you absolutely love and you want to see done right. And that's the thing. This is a premise that has not been re-released of the statute on law in America that you can't be tried double jeopardy and murder, and you get to see that live on screen by a fantastic actor and showing Vince Vaughn's acting promises. Your movie just wants a rewrite for Pebble and the Penguin. We got Happy Feet. We don't need another Penguin movie. And even the Madagascar Penguins had their movie, and it wasn't that successful. You're just wanting somebody to do your work for you.
All right. We're going to go ahead, and we're going to start with Ryan on this one. Ryan, where are you leaning and why?
This was a really, really good question, and both competitors did their best. However, Isaac, I heard him say this film needs a remake. It doesn't matter who the team is, who's going to be acting in it, what they're going to be doing with it. It just needs a remake, blah, blah, blah. Whereas Cody brought in two things: talent, who's going to be working on the film, and why we need to see this movie done by that talent. Why should this particular movie get the remake? So with that being said, got to give it to Cody. I mean, as soon as he mentioned certain names and certain talents, I'm like, you sold me just by naming the talent and why this movie should be remade or given another chance. Whereas Isaac didn't really bring much ammo to the table in this one. So with this, got to give it to Cody. Back to you at the desk.
All right, Nazario, where are you leaning and why?
Honestly, I'm on the same train as Ryan. I feel Isaac had a good idea and an interesting story, but he didn't make a complete pitch. He mentioned the studios that could do it, but he didn't have any more details on who could write it. And in the other case of Cody, he actually knows the type of movie. He had a writer who has been successful in that type of movie. And he has, at least Rosamund Pike has been in this kind of movie too, which Isaac said it wasn't an original choice, but he didn't have his own actors for the voice acting for the Penguin that could then balance the argument. And when he kept saying that the songs are really memorable, and that is the best part. He could have used the argument that basically keeping the songs and doing everything else new is what Disney has been doing for the last few years, but he didn't bring it up. I kept expecting that because that is actually all the Disney remakes keep the original songs and just put live action around it. I think he needed a little more substance. It was a good idea. I actually was intrigued by it, but I think Cody brought on the details and it was a more complete pitch. So, Cody.
All right. So, with that, Cody is up 4-0 going into the fifth and final prepped question. This is a must hit for Isaac to keep it into the speed round. And the final question is of prep debate is, what is the best movie genre of the 1970s? Isaac, you'll be going first. Time begins when you start talking.
Horror. Horror is the best movie genre of the 1970s. I'm not even going to make an argument here. I'm just going to list the horror movies that were notable that came out in the 70s. We've got The Exorcist, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Jaws, The Omen, Halloween, The Wicker Man, Suspiria, Carrie, Alien, Dawn of the Dead, Salem's Lot, Eraserhead, The Last House on the Left, The Hills Have Eyes, Black Christmas, Nosferatu and the Vampire, and I'm not even through the list yet. These are not just great movies. These are the iconic standard bearers of horror films as we know it. These are the most influential horror movies ever made. We're still feeling the effects of these movies today. They've all had influences that have affected other movies that have come out, sequels, remakes. It's affecting movies that came out today. And in the decade itself of the 70s, when you went to see a horror movie, you were always getting quality. Horror is the best genre of the 70s.
Time. All right, Cody, time begins when you start talking for your opening.
Okay, so horror, good choice, but I picked crime because crime is the correct choice of the 70s. You got The French Connection, you got Dirty Harry, you got Take 'em a Pelham 1, 2, 3, the good one, Serpico, Godfather, Godfather Part 2, Mean Streets, Chinatown. Taxi Driver, All the President's Men. The list goes on and on. Warriors, Assault on Precinct 13. These movies are literally what crime movies inspired to do. This literally inspired the Goodfellas and all those movies that came after it because of these mob and crime movies to go forward. You missed a lot of horror movies, and those are a really good choice. But the problem is, there's a lot of bad horror that came out in the 70s, but I will mention that in my class.
All right, horror versus crime. The floor is yours for the 5 minutes. Begin.
You mentioned All the President's Men in crime movies? Half the movie, Taxi Driver? Taxi Driver isn't a crime movie. These movies are drama that deal with crime, but they're not crime movies. These aren't heist movies. When you're talking about influential crime movies, there are some influential movies in crime, sure. But when you went to see drama in the 70s, it's a pretty similar genre. We're talking about a definitive genre of horror being my genre blows yours out of the water. You mentioned a handful of films. I couldn't even name the crime movies that came out that were bad in the 70s. You mentioned a handful.
Okay, no offense. I get if you have some different things that have some crime elements, but basically the crime literally two of the movies, Godfather and Godfather Part 2, are literally the cream of the crop of the 70s. 70s was a time where a lot of movies did not fully get released at times. They weren't at this rapid pace, but there are so many great movies, and they were literally rewarded for those facts of those movies coming out at that time. You've got movies like The House of the Dripped Blood. You have those cheesy horror movies that only got better from the 80s and on. Yours maybe started it, which is congratulations. That doesn't give you enough points on look at how far we came. But the basic fact is my movies have literally stood the test of time. Literally movies that came out from yours that get remade that can be done better with this.
They haven't been. That's why these movies stand up. The Exorcist have had pretenders in TV series, and they've never lived up to it. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre has had remakes. None of them lived up to it. The Jaws had a bunch of sequels. None of them lived up to the original.
I love that you picked Jaws.
Omen,
Jaws is a
Halloween,
and a thriller. It's not a horror. So I will stop you right there because Jaws doesn't count for you because there's nothing mutant with that shark. It is literally a shark on 4th of July. That's not a horror movie. You may be scared by it, but that's a thriller, not a horror. Next subject.
Thriller in horror. What a big difference.
Oh,
it's a creature feature. It was originally supposed to be a horror movie. I'm not just talking about Jaws. Halloween just had a sequel this year. Wasn't as good as the original. These movies stand the test of time.
What about your bad movies? What about name some bad crime movies? Because you got The Bay of Blood and Rabbit and movies that It's Alive. Your movie was a dime a dozen back then. You had so many. So you have quality, but you have the top-heavy horror.
And even the bad ones. Even the bad ones were influential, and yes, they were.
So
without those, we wouldn't have had Ed Wood.
What?
Without those, we wouldn't have had Ed Wood. Or some of the cheesy, stupid...
That's not even the point. You can have bad horror movies, but that doesn't mean yours was releasing all these times because they were... Horror movies' problem for the longest time is they're cash grabs. They're cheap to make, and they throw them out of the time. Your movies are very top-heavy, but there are so many bottom movies that are not that good. The Night Stalker, Taste of Blood of Dracula.
The Night Stalker's a fine movie.
Oh, okay, fine movie, great. Okay, but my movies are iconic and great.
You've got 4 or 5 iconic crime movies. I've got a dozen. When I'm talking about a genre of the 70s.
Warriors? Godfather
The
Part
Warriors
2?
is an iconic crime movie. It's a cult classic.
It's literally a game
It's a cult
movie. That's
classic.
literally the whole Chinatown, Dirty Harry, Godfather,
3,
French Connection that has literally
4.
raised the Sting is considered the best heist movie
5.
of all time.
No, that's Rafifi. That's Rafifi.
Oh, that's your whole viewpoint is what you just want to throw out, but I'm saying
That's generally accepted.
you
Rafifi
have
is the best
okay
heist
horror.
movie of all
The
time.
problem with your horror movies is they don't hold up over the time frame. There are some that really
You're
hold
insane.
Up. No, I'm not. That's actual fact because they don't have the technology they had. There's a lot of movies that released in the 70s that they literally don't have those things that you go back to and have those fears. They have those cheap scares. They have those cheap things. Like
cheap scares is jump scares is what we have now. Back then we had special effects and atmosphere, and that's what was scary. The original Halloween, The Omen, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, those things were scary because The Exorcist, one of the scariest movies of all time.
Yours movie was just, they came out and there were 5, 10 good ones, but the bottom was a lot of bad ones that but they inspired people. My movies literally changed the entire game on crime. Literally, Godfather and Godfather Part 2 are still talked about in today about mob movies. Like, that is over the test of time. No one says, oh, well, they don't do it as good as they did back there in the horror. Like, because the 80s had great horror movies. The 90s had great horror movies. This is the research.
And the best was the 70s.
Now. That's not true at all. That's just opinion.
The whole freaking program is opinion. What the fuck?
All right. Judges, strike the last 2 comments. All right. The closing arguments. Cody, you have your time for closing begins when you start talking.
Literally, crime was never bigger than it was in the 70s. It literally has movies that still are talked about and still are inspired today by crime movies. Literally, Dirty Harry and French Connection movies that should get way more attention than they actually do are actually really quality crime on that level. My movies that I couldn't tell you, like Taxidermy and stuff, because they hint at crime, they're not fully crime. They still have those crime elements of thing. Literally, the movies that came out in the 70s inspired so many directors moving forward and having those things. Horror movies of that time frame are okay, but they're cheaply, they don't age well. They don't have the same scares as they normally did. And his movie has so many in the 70s, but a lot are top heavy. They're not good at the bottom, and they stink up the entire genre.
Time. All right, Isaac, your closing begins when you start talking.
There were some great crime movies in the 70s. I'm not taking anything away from that. You want to talk about top-heavy genre, though? Once again, I pointed out in the main argument. You can name 4, maybe 5 great movies in the crime genre, but that's about it. As far as all-time greats, when you're talking about horror, the 70s is the gold standard. He talked about how influential the crime movies are, but then he didn't talk about how they are influential today. The Exorcist is one of the scariest movies of all time. Jaws, one of the most influential movies of all time. It's still influencing how people approach horror movies and what you see on screen versus what you don't see on screen. This isn't just about the movies, it's about what the genre was, and the genre was never better than in the 70s. It was horror.
Time. All right. That was a good debate. I'm going to go ahead and go first. With this one, Isaac kind of got caught. Isaac threw out the point about, you can only name like 4 or 5, but Cody named like 13 in his opening. I counted because I figured that was a point that would come up. Isaac said that there's no difference between that crime. There's only like 4 or 5 crime movies that are good, and then called half of his picks just dramas. And then Cody kind of turned that point back around, which I feel like was a knockout blow, was when Isaac brought up Jaws, and Cody said, well, that's a thriller, not a horror. And then Isaac said, what's the difference? And it kind of just turned his whole argument back on him in the same way that he said that crime and drama, what's the difference? So to me, I'm going to give it to Cody. I just think Cody kind of got into Isaac's head a little bit, and Isaac got a little flustered and wasn't able to really hit a lot of very valid points on crime. So I'm going to go with Cody. Nazario, where are you giving your point and why?
Okay. Yeah, I was going to mention the same thing. They both actually mentioned a bunch of movies that are very memorable. And I did think Cody brought up a point that got well rebutted, that it was horror they should remake these movies. But Isaac said very well that they have tried very much, and they can't make those movies work again. Cody also said that 80s and 90s had a bunch of great horror movies. I think they had some classics, but most of it was really trash. I wish Isaac had pushed back a little more on that, because 80s and 90s movies are fun and entertaining, but they're not great horror. I don't know why Isaac brought up Ed Wood. I think Ed Wood directed his final movie probably late 60s, maybe beginning the 70s, but not really. But I think he gave a lot of more volume. Cody did it in the intro, but he wasn't really consistent. And I do think that Isaac gave a lot more volume in the classic horror from the 70s than the crime one. Maybe some of the crime movies are better than the classic horror ones, but I think in sheer volume, the 70s is a great horror decade. So very, very, very close, slightly. I'm going to give it to Isaac.
All right, Ryan, you are the tiebreaker. Are we going to the speed round, or is this one over by knockout? Where are you leaning and why?
Wow. No pressure, right, ladies and gentlemen? Anyway, look, this was a very contested debate. Very, very contested. They put all their points, and the thing that really pushed it for me over the edge with Isaac particularly is that kept mentioning these movies, how influential they are, how they continue to remain influential to the nth degree. Cody brought up really, really good points too with the movies in his respective genre. That's all well and good. He almost had it, but towards the end, and I believe it was in Isaac's closing where he said these movies are influential. They've really done a number on the horror genre. Took it to a place no one, it's like at least some people didn't think was possible. So, man, real hard. But I'm actually going to give it to Isaac on this one.
All right, so Isaac's on the board, and with that, he saves it, getting into the speed round 4-1 as we go into the speed round. And your first question in the speed round is going to work like this. You're going to get 30 seconds for your opening, 15-second rebuttal. Pretty standard speed round stuff. Your first question in the speed round, say your answer first, you're going to get it. It is an either or. What is the better Will Ferrell comedy? Step Brothers or Old School?
Step Brothers.
All right, Cody's got Step Brothers. Isaac, you'll be arguing Old School. Cody, you have 30 seconds when you start talking for your opening argument.
The one thing that is great about Will Ferrell comedies is it has to be quotable, and Step Brothers has so many quotable lines, and they have such a great balance between him and John C. Reilly. That's the best thing about this. They have those things like, I'm not even calling him dad, even if there's a fire. I have a belly full of white dog shit, and you lay this shit on me? Like, those lines are so funny between those two characters, and you have that mom and son relationship that shouldn't have actually happened in that because they're too old to be there. Old School's fun and all, but the cast of characters get mute, and it's really sexist, and it's a little awkward to watch at times.
Time. All right, Isaac, 30 seconds for Old School when you start talking.
Without Old School, we don't have Step Brothers. Without Old School, we don't have any other movies. Old School, on its own, is a great movie. It has some of the most iconic movies. Will Ferrell streaking through the quad. You know, talking about quotable lines. It's got that's one of the funniest scenes Will Ferrell's ever done. Step Brothers is not even the best John C. Reilly Will Ferrell movie. That would be Talladega Nights. Old School is the better movie. It might be have some taboo subject. That's the point of comedy, is to push the boundaries, and it's funny.
Time. All right, 15-second rebuttal for Cody when you start talking.
Step Brothers is actually a Will Ferrell movie. Will Ferrell's more of the star. The problem with Old School is it's a cast of characters, so he gets lost in the shuffle a lot of things. Yes, he streaks, but he's always a lovable thing. This is actually the main star, and this is honestly their best movie together because they battle each other back and forth of living as adults in their parents'
Time.
Fantastic.
All right, Isaac, 15 seconds for your closing when you start talking.
Will Ferrell is better in small doses, like in Old School, not as the main character. That's one of the things that hurts Step Brothers. It's just Dumb and Dumber in a different aspect, and he's no Jim Carrey or Jeff Daniels. I don't buy the relationship between him and them. They're just Dumb and Dumber all over again.
All right. Ryan, we're going to start with you. Where are you leaning and what?
Wow. It's a heck of a question. Very good question. Very good responses by both. But the thing that put it over the top for me was a comment made by the competitor known as Isaac, where he says, without this movie, we wouldn't have gotten the others to a certain extent with Will Ferrell's performances and his other castmates and all that jazz. So, Isaac, let's pledge this fraternity. I'm going to give it to you for Old School.
All right, Nazario, are you going with Isaac or Cody? It is 4-2 as we get into our third speed round question, or a second speed round question. Stay with me. This one is wordy. But you know what? All right. You're at Walmart and you're looking through the Blu-ray bins, and there's only 2 movies there. Of these 2 movies, which do you buy? The Last Airbender or Batman and Robin?
Batman and Robin.
All right. Cody's arguing Batman and Robin. Isaac's arguing The Last Airbender. Cody, 30 seconds when you start talking.
Batman and Robin is over cheesy and pretty bad at times, but you get to laugh at those one-liners by Arnold Schwarzenegger, and if you get drunk, you get to have a good time. If you watch Last Airbender, you have a long-ass, drawn-out movie by M. Night Shyamalan that doesn't accept any of the source material laid before him, with terrible CGI and terrible writing and terrible graphics all across the board. If you literally get to watch Batman and Robin, you at least get the campy fun kind of in that movie. The problem with Last Airbender, it's unwatchable because they shit on the source material throughout the entire movie. It's kind of ridiculous.
Time. All right, Isaac, 30 seconds when you start talking.
I would buy The Last Airbender because in college we actually would gather as a group and watch this movie and jeer and make fun of it and really go after it hard, like one of those movie theater 3000 type of things or whatever it's called. Batman and Robin, you can't watch this as a Batman movie. It ruins all your favorite characters. You can't. It's too easy to make fun of, and it's not entertaining enough to get any joy out of. At least with The Last Airbender, you can get mad about it. You can have debates with your friends about what you would have done better and where you would improve on it.
Time. All right, Cody, 15 seconds for your rebuttal when you start talking.
You get the same thing with Batman and Robin. You can laugh and joke with your friends and all that stuff with this movie. Last Airbender is way too long, drawn out. The CGI doesn't work. The characters are not developed enough, and they don't care about the source material where it was a great cartoon and he brought it over for a cash grab and it failed miserably. Batman and Robin's fun.
Time. All right. Isaac, you have 15 seconds for your closing when you start talking.
It's obvious that Batman and Robin was the bigger cash grab, so therefore there's not that much to make fun of about it. Whereas with Last Airbender, you can tell that people are trying there, and you can at least have an argument and discussion with your friends like I used to do about where they went wrong, what you can improve on, and it's
Time.
a better purpose.
All right. We're going to start with Nazario. Where are you leaning and why?
I'm thinking Cody made a better case for Batman and Robin. They both made the argument that you can watch it to make fun of it, but Cody did say that Airbender is too long for it. It's a way heavier movie, and it is. Isaac said that you cannot take it seriously, Batman as a Batman movie, but Batman has been campy before, so you can work on that level if you really want to see it that way. I think Cody had this one.
All right. Ryan, where are you leaning and why?
With this one, both competitors put some really good points in. However, Cody really he really went after this really well. Why? Because he said even though the film is not so good, you can still enjoy it, get some campiness out of it from past iterations of the character. Whereas Isaac just said, yeah, the movie's bad, but we can make fun of it, still enjoy it to some degree. But however, Cody pulled out a few more other points that unfortunately Isaac didn't bring up within his argument, respectively. So with that being said, it's a utility belt, not a money belt. $6 million, $7 million. Never leave the cave without it. Give it to Cody.
And your winner, and the new Movie Battleground Debate Champion of the World, Cody Newberry. Final score of 5-2. This was a good debate. It was actually really intense and really close all the way around. Both did a great job. And I think it just came down to like little things said at the end of each round. It was very close between the two. Ryan, what are your thoughts on this debate?
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. Some of these questions were very well put together. The competitors did a really good job. A lot of them put through in some good points for good measure within each of the questions. The speed round was just a barrel of laughs. Good entertainment by both competitors. My hat's off to both Isaac and Cody. This was fun. It was fun to be a judge here. It was fun to be on this panel with you guys, and this was a good match between Isaac and Cody, but we do have a new champion. So my hat's off to the new champion, and Isaac, we'll see at the local Walmart at the budget place. We'll pick out some Blu-rays together. We'll have a good time. Back to you in the studio.
All right, Nazario, what were your thoughts on this debate? And what do you think of the new champ?
I think they started off pretty well, pretty solid both sides, but I think Isaac let himself fall too often into Cody's arguments. He kept making him go on the defense for little things or changing the question of the debate, and he kept falling for it one too many times. So he always was playing defense, and it's very, very hard to win that way. I think Cody's great. He has beat me before, actually debating in other leagues, and you can see he has a very particular style of offense, which is tends to be very effective. I think it can be countered. I think Isaac did a great job in a couple of questions there. Actually, for me, he would have had 3 out of the questions that we had, but it was not on his day today. So great match, guys. Congratulations to the new champions.
Absolutely. I think it was a great debate. I agree. I think Isaac just kind of got caught up in Cody's game. I think Cody just his technique was flawless today. And Isaac, he just came in. He was like a bare knuckles brawler, just came in ready to go, and it was a slugfest. Over to our new champion, Cody. How does it feel to be the champion? What are your thoughts on your performance today?
Fuck Isaac. No, I'm just kidding. Isaac. I feel like me and Isaac could have a real great movie discussion about things. He has a great way of delivering. I will arguably say, even though I did win, it's 5-2. It was a lot closer in my thing because I had the score a little different. It was a lot. It was a lot. He threw a lot of jabs. He's a very heavy thrower, and when he can piss me off, and I see that I pissed him off. So that's why I loved it, because it's not trivia. It's not about what you know. It's about how you throw. And he was a champion for a reason. He did an amazing job today. I mean, I have to thank Brooklyn, Vale, and Robert Parker. I ran some questions. I talked to them. I prepped a little bit with them. And they helped me, so I owe a lot to them. Again, I think Isaac, I want Isaac in Nerdgasm, where I help in multiplex about fandom topics. I think he'd be amazing at that. No, I expect in a couple months or whenever, Isaac will be right back here, and I will be having to battle him one more time. And I feel like the next time it's not going to be pretty. I think I pissed him off. Again, we're unprepped. Like, I like when we see answers, because then you can develop your entire strategy as champion moving forward. I hope I can implement that. But if not, it's fair. But yeah, he's a hell of a debater. He threw some options that I prepped for, and they didn't show up. And then he threw ones that are out of the world, and I was like, damn, now I gotta remember Pebble and the Penguin. Okay, so. Well done, sir. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. This is my main point, that records don't matter in debate. If you're a good debater, if you've never debuted in a league, but you have in other leagues, you can make an impact and you can do a good job. And I think I proved that today. Again, hats off, Isaac. I will see you back here real soon. I already know it.
All right, over to our unfortunate loser today, Isaac. How do you feel about your performance in this match today?
I mean, honestly, I'm not happy with my performance, obviously. I didn't do enough. Cody was right in the intro. There was definitely a little bit of rust on me. I think it showed. But that's fine. I'm not too bad. I'm pretty happy with my performance in the speed round. I argued the wrong movie twice in a row, and came out on top on one of them. How do you argue for The Last Airbender? It can't be done. As soon as I picked it, I was like, well, good, GG's, well played. It is. Yeah, it was a good debate. Cody's insane. He's got such a good way of fighting. It's very similar to my own, and it's kind of the first time I've had to face that. And yeah, it's certainly good to get each other the ghost a little bit. I look forward to the rematch, because I want it. Now I've gotten warmed up, got the rust knocked off of me, and I'm ready.
Absolutely. But with that, we have a new Movie Battleground Champion. Thank you all so much for watching this